Is this cable better than this one? Yes. And you know why? Because it's red. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tommy and today we'll talk about signal cables. Unfortunately, there is a lot of voodoo about signal cables and a lot of magicians and spellcasters who can promise you that only their product can provide you the punchy bass, warm mids and the crystal clear and airy highs. Fortunately enough, ladies and gentlemen, everything is about physics, so before we'll talk about how to choose the right cable for you, let's talk about what is really going on and how the cable may or may not affect your sound. So if we are talking about frequencies under 20K, we are still technically in low frequency region. That means that we can use this model of our cable, which is made by 4 parameters. If you want to know more about it, you can just Google. And the most significant part of this schematic here is the capacity, because all these 3 will not affect the sound that much as the capacity right here from this point. It really depends what type of signal source we are using and what is our input impedance. Now I would like to divide the sources into 2 categories actually. First one is passive and the second one is active. I will start with the active. Which are these for? Everything what is powered by phantom power, battery or some AC power source. And every active component has built-in electronics and amplifier which helps to transfer the signal from the source to the input device. Now, it doesn't mean that the cable will not change the sound at all. It means that it helps to transfer the signal as best as possible. And it also means that we have different possibilities. For example, with some instruments or phantom power condenser microphones, we can use, for example, 10-meter cable without worrying how good or bad the sound will be. If we are designing, for example, line outputs from the sound card or from some mixing console, we want to run more than 10 meters of cable. In some studios or in live situations, there may be 30 or 50 meters of cable. We have to be able to run this cable. So the source impedance should be very, very low, actually fraction of ohms. And the higher the input resistance of the signal source is, the more sensitive the device is in a way which cable we are actually using. So the microphones or some instruments may be more sensitive than mixing console outputs. But anyway, active sources are less sensitive to this. So for example, with active pickups, it doesn't matter or it shouldn't matter if you use 2-meter cable or 10-meter cable. It should sound almost the same. Now with passive design, that's absolutely different story. And the cable and the input impedance of the device may change the sound very significantly. So now I would like to talk about impedance matching, and we are not talking about radio frequency stuff, about digital stuff or about the power amplifiers. We are talking about signal level and audible frequencies. So empirically this load resistance should be at least 10 times higher than the output impedance of our signal source. So the signal source doesn't see that much load. Why we need this? We need this because this device has some impedance characteristics and more or less it is some resonance system. So it may have some impedance peak and some impedance resonance, which may change depending on the type of cable we are using. But anyway, it shouldn't be loaded too much because every signal source has its own finite energy which can provide. And what happened if we use lower input resistance at this point? It means that the signal source is asked to deliver more current than the device is capable of. And another thing which happened is that while there is some reactive currents flowing between the capacitive element and the inductive element, which creates this resonance, the energy which basically bounds between these elements is changed to the heat in this resistor, so it's basically damped. And the more we are loading the signal source, the less highs from the resonance we get, and also we get more saturation in mid frequencies and especially low frequencies, and we also get more distortion. And this is basically what we most of the time don't want, but sometimes it may be desirable. And for these situations, especially the mic preamplifiers have switches or potentiometers for tuning the input impedance of the mic pre. In case of guitar pickups, we most of the time have the tone controls, or we can use different length or type of the cable. Now let's take back the cable in the game and let's talk about the different constructions. Non-symmetrical cable or symmetrical cable, but in the end there is no difference if we take to account the capacity between these two wires or between the wires and the shielding. In the end we can calculate only with one value per meter. And what is the most important for this capacity here is the material of the insulation, which can be some form of rubber or something like that. And the higher quality this material would be, the less capacity we can get per meter. The more distance between the wire and the shielding or between wire to wire, the less capacity we can get. So the thicker the cable basically is, the better the parameters should be. So you can see that if you want to change your sound significantly, the length is the key and the construction of the cable is the key as well. And that's basically it. So now back to the show. So the best cable is no cable, but still we have to use them, right? So there are 5 things you have to consider before you buy your cables. First, the connectors. Unless you need very temporary solution, use high quality connectors such as nitric or amphenol, because they can survive the everyday handling and the soldering process, and they don't lose the contact over time. Especially with XLR female, this is very important. There are some less expensive solutions, but if you don't want to buy hundreds of them, so you want to spare every penny, I highly recommend use the quality ones. But still, if you want to spare some penny, you can get them. But I don't recommend. Gold-plated or chrome-plated. It depends how long you want your connectors to last in years, but sonically, there is no difference at all. Second, the construction of the cable. There is huge difference if you want some installation cable, multi-core snake, or some instrument or microphone cable on which you will probably dance every show. So keep in mind that the diameter and the size of the cable is the first technical aspect you have to follow, because in some cases you need to use where it's in cable because there is no space. Third, the durability and flexibility. This relates to the previous one, but now we are focusing only on mechanical aspects of the cable. As you know, microphone cables are filled with cloth fibers, which in combination with thick overall insulation makes them flexible and durable. In case of multi-core cables, handling of multi-core cable can be a real pain in the ass, and we want to avoid not working channels. So it's very important to know if the cable should be installed or used every day. Fourth, the capacity and resistance per meter. The final decision should be made based on the capacity per meter and the conductor cross-section, in other words, resistance. The more cross-section, the less resistance. It depends how long the cable should be and what devices should be connected with them. So if your cables need to be longer than these, you should probably get the better ones. But that's obviously more expensive. But if you want only short cables, you can stick with the cheaper ones. Fifth, shielding. Sonically, there is no difference at all. If you are doing some permanent installation, or if you want to use some expensive cable for your expensive U87, then yes, you can stick with some double layer or some more advanced shielding, but keep in mind this will only make your Faraday cage stronger, but only in electric part of the noise. The magnetic part is still in game somehow. For basic stuff you can stick with one layer, copper fibers, the more dense the better, but there is no magic about the shielding at all. If your gear is alright and you are not in very noisy environment, one layer is the way to go.
Well, that's all nice, but what about some evidence, Tommy?
Here you go! Ladies and gentlemen, now I am talking to Rode NT1A closely with 10 meter cable and capacity of 760 picofarad wire to wire and 1.26 wire to ground. At some point I'll switch to 30 meter multipair cable, which has very poor capacity in comparison to the previous one. There is the previous cable in series as well as one very old, which is 16 meter long. Together the capacity was 3.73 nanofarad wire to wire and 6.46 wire to ground. Well, you hear some difference now? Yeah. I switched to the dynamic Sennheiser E906, which is actually an instrument microphone. And I am doing the same test, so the 10 meter cable alone, directly to the Focusrite Scarlett with 3K input impedance, and the previous longer combination with only one difference, there is no phantom power. In the next sample, you'll hear passive and active guitar with 2 meter and 10 meter high quality cable with capacity of 560 picofarad and 1.27 nanofarad. So, we finally heard that. Well, yeah. In case of the passive pickups, there is a definitely huge difference if you use longer cable, shorter cable, or if you forget to switch the high Z button on your sound card. And especially on the clean or direct signal, there is a huge difference. In case of distorted signal, the difference is still there, but it is way lower than I thought it would be. In all the other cases, like the EMGs and active microphones, dynamic microphones. But you know what? I will put some link in the description where you can download all these files and you can listen to them, and maybe you can prove me I'm wrong. Because I may be wrong, but at least that's what I heard. No differences, only in case of passive pickup. And the reason? No magic at all. It is only about capacity and the input impedance. In other words, how long the cable is and what is the capacity per meter. So what's the conclusion here? Well, the flexibility, durability of the cable, decent connectors, and that's it. Follow the rules, the best cables are the shortest cable possible, and you're ready to go. If you want to record your passive guitar, well, use shortest cable possible. 2 or 3 meters should be good enough to just sitting or standing and recording. And that's it. No bullshit. No silver, no gold needed, except of the connectors. But yeah, all about physics, no magic. And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching until the end. And if you like this video, just smash the buttons, like, dislike, leave a comment. I appreciate everything. And with that, I'm gonna get out of here. But next time, we'll talk about in-ear monitoring system design, so stay tuned.